Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure to speak after the chairman of the Primary Production Select Committee, and I can assure Mr. Ardern that if he was a minister, there won't be many angry speeches in this House against him. He's a good chairman. He's a good man who should be a Minister of Agriculture, really. But can I say that, Mr. Speaker, this bill is really an interim arrangement. I would call it interim arrangement that even Simon Bridges, who's the person who started this all, he even accepted in his speech that there's a need to do more. And so clearly this is an interim arrangement, because just by increasing penalties or fines or jail is not going to solve all the problems. And we can't, in this country, we cannot accept cruelty to animals. Mr. Speaker, can I acknowledge the work done by the committee, along with the chairman who just mentioned, but the work that the committee has done and the work that officials have done. And also I must acknowledge that we have made some very good amendments to the bill, and the committee did a good job in all that. So, Mr. Speaker, this bill comes after some very unfortunate incidences which have happened in relation to animal cruelty, whether it was the kittens being fed to the pit bulls and our dogs being shot. I mean, there has been very cruel situations where this bill was arose out of those situations, and I'm delighted that Simon Bridges, he took this initiative, and then of course has passed down to the minister, who has taken up this and brought to the House. And I'm glad in some way that he has also, in the recent budget, he has increased the money for the SPCA and for issues to do with animal cruelty area. But Mr. Speaker, as we know, that in 2008 there were nearly 14,000 complaints received by the SPCA against animal cruelty. There were only 110 which resulted in some kind of charges being laid, and out of those there were only 58 convictions, and that really shows that how hard it is to prove animal cruelty, whether it's ill treatment, it's in relation to and the new reckless ill treatment of animal, the new clause in this new offence in this bill. Mr. Speaker, I think it's very important for us to realise that while we have done this good job in terms of this bill, and we all, the whole Parliament approved this, and 122 members have actually approved this, but there are issues which are important for us as an agricultural nation. And that is because we are dependent, very highly dependent on export of our animals, animal products, whether it's dairy products or meat or wool, whatever. We are highly dependent on the welfare of our animals and the perception, particularly the perception out in our marketplaces. People want to know the meat, the wool, the milk, where it's coming from, is coming from animals which are well treated, well looked after, and that's an important issue which we have to be very careful in the future, particularly in relation to the legal areas. Because as we know, there are ever-increasing difficulties in exporting our products to EU and other Asian countries, and we want to ensure that we have more and more of our products going to those markets. But people are watching how we treat our animals, particularly as the member from the Green Party mentioned, that in relation to the farm animals. Now we got to be very careful what's the perception out there in the marketplaces in relation to the farm animals, because things that we have heard, for example, how the pigs and sows in crates. We heard about cubicle farming, some of those issues. We heard about 1080 drops, and there's a controversial issue, it's ongoing issue. I totally personally agree that we need to use 1080 because there's no other option at the moment, and the science hasn't come up with anything new which is comparable to 1080 drops. So we have to use it, but there are people out there within the country and overseas who are opposed to using 1080 drops. So the issues like that, and also the issues in relation to the treatment of young animals like lambs and calves in the snow area, for example. And those are the issues which I think all of us are very mindful as we go forward, how the marketplaces, how they see it, that how we treat these animals. And I think it's important that we, as a nation, that we look after animals very well. And particularly, as the Minister himself has accepted now...
Order. I'm sorry to interrupt the member. Look, order. Order. Look, the level of noise is so great, I'm having difficulty hearing the speaker. So please quieten down, but if discussions need to take place, please go out to the lobbies. Dr Ashraf Chowdhury.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I appreciate your intervention in this case. Mr Speaker, as I was saying, it's very important for us to be mindful of our future export to the markets, which are becoming very differentiating in terms of where these animal products are coming. And our country, as we very proudly say when we travel overseas and we meet with other parliamentarians, other officials, and we take a lot of pride in our clean and green image. And that's very good. We are very proud of that. But at the same time, when these stories about animal treatment and particularly on the farm, they reach out to the marketplaces, the people want to know exactly what's happening. And I think this particular bill is, in my view, as I said earlier, is an interim arrangement, interim bill, and we'll have to do more. And I'm quite sure, in fact, in a few years' time, probably this issue will come up again in relation to the farm animals. And I think all the farmers in the Parliament, they all realise that this is an issue that we got to be very mindful, particularly how we treat our pigs and cows and sheep on the farm, and how these farms, as we become more and more intensive farming, particularly into dairy farming and the issues we had heard about in relation to water utilisation, in relation to dairy farming down in Canterbury. It was a very hot issue, the cubicle farming a while ago. And in fact, at the moment, we haven't heard much about it, where it's at. But as we get into intensive farming, and I suppose as a country, to grow our GDP, we'll have to get into more and more export, particularly in the dairy products, which I personally believe there's a huge market out in Asia, and a growing market in Asia, and countries like China, and of course India coming up, and other Asian countries coming up, who are very keen to import our products, particularly the dairy products and wool, and of course also into forestry and others, but particularly in relation to animal. And I think it's important that we are not careless in treating our animals, and that unfortunate stories like those we have heard of before, that don't get out in the media and to the marketplace. So we go. So, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, can I once again say that this is a good bill, and I want to acknowledge Simon Bridges, who's back in the House, the good work he did as started this, and of course the Minister. I know he has done. He was the chairman of the Select Committee for 6 years that I know, and he never raised this issue himself. So obviously it's a credit to our new member, the young members for Tauranga, who has done a good job in bringing this bill. And I'm delighted the government has taken over this bill and taken next step. And I must appreciate the extra money that the Minister has received in this area, in this budget. So with those words, Mr. Speaker, I commend this bill.